Hi, I'm Yaya Han, and today I bring you a full tutorial on how to make Vayne's gold crossbow. Recently, I cosplayed Vayne from League of Legends, and I made her entire costume and props from scratch. You can watch the full process build video here actually, but I wanted to do a tutorial on the Vayne crossbow because it was hands down the most challenging part of the costume. This prop required a ton of different techniques and materials to build, and I learned a few things along the way that I think might be pretty interesting to you as well, or maybe even useful. In fact, all the techniques I used to make this bow can be applied to other cosplay props, so let's jump right in with the tutorial. Most of this crossbow is EVA foam, which is nice and lightweight. I used 10mm EVA foam sheets from Cosplay Fabrics. Start by sizing the stock length and drawing out a template. Once you're happy with the size of your prop, transfer the template onto 10mm EVA foam and cut it out. I cut 2 stock pieces for the top and 2 for the bottom. Glue the 2 top layers together with contact cement. Be sure to work in a well-ventilated area and wear a respirator mask. Now glue the bottom layers together. Use the same method to make the curved bow parts. Glue layers of foam together until you have enough to sand it into shape later. Now you have to engineer the inside structure and how the bow parts attach to the stock. To do that, make a T-shape with PVC pipe parts from a hardware store. It should fit into the stock and protrude out about 2 inches on either side. Mark the placement, then start carving out a channel for the PVC pipe to fit inside. Cut away the foam with a craft knife, then use a Dremel tool like the 3000 to shave and refine the channel further. Work slowly and be sure not to carve or sand too deep. Now the bow stock has a cavity to fit the support rod. To make the prop bend at the trigger, cut away a small wedge of foam at the bend and hot glue the notches together. You don't have to use metal for the support, but I had aluminum rods in the shop, so we were able to bend one and then permanently bond it to the PVC joint with epoxy sculpt. Check that your support fits, then hot glue it into the channel. Large C-clamps really help with the glue bonding. Just be sure to use a flat board to avoid leaving marks. At this point, you can also glue the top and bottom of the stock together with contact cement and let it dry overnight. Now let's finish the base for the curved bow parts. Just like the stock, you will glue a PVC joint into each bow part. Mark the placement and cut a cavity for the PVC, then hot glue it in. Build up layers with more foam sheets until it matches the thickness of the stock. You can use foam clay to fill in any crevices and smooth out curves. Next up, you will use a Dremel tool to really shape and refine your bow. I really rely on my Dremel 3000 for this task. I start off with a rough sanding bit, then move on to a fine grit sanding bit to really refine the shapes. I love seeing props come to life through sanding. With your base done, it's time to add details. Draw out the center arrow channel and the adornments. Use wax paper to make quick templates on the go. The channel details I made are also out of EVA foam and they can be glued on easily with contact cement. After attaching one side, I used the nimble Dremel Micro and a grinding bit to carve out the arrow channel. I love using foam triangle bevels for details on props and armor. You can cut them, shape them, and glue them together, and they curve easily around all kinds of shapes. The remaining details, such as the top of the bow, the sight, and the trigger, they're all made by layering foam together and shaping each piece with a Dremel tool. You truly can make just about any shape if you Dremel it. Now we move on to the curved bows. They have golden armor plates, which I patterned out by wrapping the piece in blue painter's tape and then drawing directly on it. However you prefer to make a template, always be sure to label each piece. Cut out the template, transfer it onto 5mm EVA foam, then cut out the armor plates. Glue each plate together with contact cement. The biggest armor plate, Plate 1, has carved design lines which can be replicated in foam. First draw on the lines, then carefully carve in the lines with a craft knife without going through the bottom. Then hit the piece with a heat gun and watch the lines open up. It's like magic. You can practice this technique on spare foam until you get the hang of it. You can also cut foam as thin as slivers for extra details, but beware that it can be quite fiddly and time-consuming. I'm not sure I would do this for an entire suit of armor. The triangle bevels are here to save the day again. Create sharp trim borders around the armor plates by simply cutting and gluing the bevels at matching angles. It's so easy. Plate 1 is done. Use the same process to make plates 2 and 3. Cosplay Fabrics makes a larger triangle bevel that is perfect for the lip of the bow parts. We cast resin buttons that I hot glued onto the bow, and the ring you see is made out of half moon dowels from the Cosplay Fabrics foam line. More 2mm EVA foam was used for additional details like this. At last, it's time to glue on the plates. I used contact cement to make the initial bond and hot glue for extra bond where it needed it. Finally, it's time to paint. Use spray Plasti-Dip to seal and prime your foam prop. Shake it up well, follow the instructions. Saturate the area, but don't paint it on so thick that it sags. Be sure to paint in a well-ventilated area and wear a respirator and gloves. We're lucky to have a paint booth in the shop here. Wait around 30 minutes between layers and paint on 4 to 5 layers total. Let the Plasti-Dip dry overnight. Now I'll show you how I painted the vein bow using an airbrush and hand painting. For the wood look, paint a brown base coat first. I used Tamiya acrylic paint, which airbrushes beautifully when thinned down. Then dip a stipple brush and hand paint texture on in 2 to 3 shades. You want to go lighter and darker than your base shade. This will give the prop a more organic layered look. As you can see, the lighter ochre really breaks through the brown base coat, and the rough stipple brush naturally adds texture. The next step is hand painting lines to mimic wood grain. Use a thin detail brush and black acrylic paint. The trick is to draw the line, then smudge it with a stiff brush so it doesn't look too neat. As the last step, you can go over the entire prop surface with a transparent ink wash. Choose a color or mix them together for the shade you want, and brush it all over so the textures and lines you created look sunken in. With the wood painted, it's time to prep the bow to be gilded. Brian taped up all the wooden areas for me using painter's tape. We chose to paint the gold with Tamiya gold spray paint because it is so smooth and it is the perfect color. Brian painted on 3 layers. Once the paint dried overnight, we removed the tape and added the finishing touches. I love using all-clad aqua gloss as the top coat for my props. It can be airbrushed straight from the bottle and has such a nice smooth finish. For any top coat, paint on at least 2 layers. And there it is, the finished Vane crossbow. Alright, what did you think? I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. A video like this one takes forever to put together, which is why in the past I haven't done that many tutorial videos, but I really enjoy sharing information. When I find something new, I want to tell you guys about it. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, Yaya Cosplay, and let me know in the comments what other tutorials you'd like to see in the future. Do you want more prop making tutorials, more painting tutorials? Would you like to see sewing tutorials? Let me know and I'll do my best to make what you guys want to see. Thank you so much and I'll see you next time. Happy crafting!